Thanks for tuning in to RougeRadio.com, show 22 of 2012. Brought to you this week by Ketter.com, a new solution to your fence ideas. This week on CFL News, Jenn talks with Murray McCormick from the Leader Post to recap Week 16 and preview next week's games. This week on Canadian University Football News, Kevin talks with Andrew Wadden to recap Week 7 and preview next week's action. In Canadian Junior Football League news, John DeNapoli and Ryan Waters recap Week 11, including playoff scores, and preview next week's matchups. Show 22 kicks off now.
Hey, you. Yeah, you with that sandpaper and paintbrush getting ready to sand and paint that wooden fence again this year, when you could be sitting back, relaxing on your patio and watching your neighbors do that work. Get rid of that wood fence and easily install a new low-maintenance resin fence that lasts. Visit Ketter.com, Keter.com, for videos, product information, and more. You can find this fence at some Costco's across North America and always at Costco.ca with shipping right to your door. Ketter.com.
RougeRadio.com. Jen, wrapping up Week 16 action with Murray McCormick, sports writer, beat writer with the Regina Leader Post. Hi, Murray.
Hey, how you doing, Jen?
Not bad. An interesting week in terms of, I think the playoff pictures are a little more clear in the CFL. I'm sorry, Winnipeg. You're not making them. But not a great week, I think, if you were on the losing end. Fairly predictable results. I don't think there was any huge surprises this week. I would have expected the Saskatchewan-Edmonton game to be a little bit closer, but everything else pretty much played out the way I kind of envisioned them in my head. But the West looks fairly clear. The East looks a little bit more clear now, but we still have no clue who's going to be that third-place team in the East.
Yeah, and I don't even know if we have a clear picture of the third-place team in the West quite yet, because Edmonton winning kind of shook things up a little bit here. You know, if the Whites had won, that would have been pretty well got them a playoff berth and made things look pretty good. But it's kind of BC's running away with the West, and I think they're arguably the best team in the league, and they're going to clinch first place and have home field advantage and do all other things. Calgary, I know, which is the Tiger or the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but Calgary looked really good. So they're going to get second place, I think, because they have the season series over the Riders, and the Riders and Eskimos are going to battle out. A big key, I know the Riders lost this week. They also have lost the season series to Calgary and to Edmonton. So they've got to, they still have a game up on Edmonton right now, but they still got to maintain that, because if they lose, they're going to lose any tiebreakers because of that. So it was a big loss for the Riders in terms of, momentum after winning 3 in a row and 5 of their 6. They're going to Edmonton, whose team has kind of floundered a little bit after bouncing back, but it was a loss that kind of shook up the standings in the West a little bit. And in the East, oh man, who to believe? I think the Blue Bombers we thought would be kind of struggling, but I didn't think the Tiger Cats would be as bad as they have. And I thought defensively they'd be a little stronger than that, but
yeah, I picked them to win the East going into the season. Matt Schnetty and I from the National Post both picked them, and yeah, we're sorry, Tiger fans, because apparently we are the kiss of death for your team.
Well, I grew up a Tiger Cats fan because I grew up in Ontario, and I still allow myself, even though I've been out here for 30 years, I still bleed a little black and gold, and it's just so tiring to see whenever a free agent goes there, he just sort of dies and goes into oblivion and stuff, and they just keep struggling, and then the stadium battles and everything else. It's a tough team to cheer for, and I know some of the guys on that team. Like Ray Williams is one of my all-time favorite CFL players, and he's such a great guy, and I really like Henry Burst and stuff, and I was kind of hoping good things would happen the last year if I ever win stadium, but maybe it's the way it's meant to be for the Tiger Cats. So.
Yeah, I mean, they did get great stadium news this week, though. The press release came out with the new view of Ivor Wynne Stadium, so we got to kind of look through, and you could do an almost kind of interactive tour.
Yep.
It's great. I know a lot of Hamilton fans are very, very upset that there are no boxes anymore, particularly the Box J boys, and I fully understand why they're upset. I don't know if there's anything that can be done at this stage in the game to fix it. I mean, really, you're trying to build a stadium in a year. I don't know that you can fix the little things. But
well, the thing is, the importance of boxes. The riders even put the rider stadium is going to be destroyed, and they're going to get a new one. But they even built boxes for the next 4 years, so they could generate income from that money. Boxes are huge. I didn't realize they weren't doing that in Hamilton. That's really.
Well, they're doing the luxury boxes, but they're not doing the boxes in terms of the seating arrangements that they have at Ivor Stadium. You know, like you sit in.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So they're taking away that little piece of. It's one of those things that's a quirk just to Ivor Stadium, but I think the fans like it. It's been there for, as long as most people can remember, and it's upsetting a lot of people that it's gone.
Well, okay. I think I'd be more upset about the fact they're not building it on the waterfront where there's parking and room for growth, but I think the boxes are kind of a small complaint.
I would agree. As somebody who has to drive to Hamilton to see a game, I agree that the lack of parking and the lack of room for growth does kind of suck, but they were committed to building it on the same site, which also means that you have nowhere to play.
Exactly. It also means, and I hate to say this, what's underneath that land? Like, remember Ivor Stadium, how old it is and how much hazardous, and I'm not by any engineer, and I have no idea what's underneath there, but there must be hazardous waste under there. I wonder when they start digging and go, we can't be into this stuff. We can't make any people work there. And I know it's not based on anything, just what I've watched on TV and seen with the shows when they start digging into old ground and stuff and things show up. So I hope for the Tiger Cats none of that takes place, and maybe there's much pointier heads, smarter guys than me looking after that. But I'm concerned that was, that's at my mind, it's a concern, and they have no place to play, and it's just going to be. We saw what happened to the Blue Bombers when they went on the road for 4 games in a row. Like, it ruined their season, and it just, they brought everything, all the bad things came out of that 4 games on the road. It's tough to play on the road every week and not have money coming in and make the guys leave every day. So,
yeah, it's going to be a tough year for next season. So, I mean, it's still possible that the Ticats could finish really strong and get in the playoff berth. And once you're in the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen. But they've got especially after the 37-17 thrashing, I believe is the correct term.
Yeah, thrashing is a good. Shabackling is what Hemi Burris
let's be fair. 14 of those 17 points came in the fourth quarter. It was a lot bigger of a rout until the fourth quarter happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So I don't know what you're seeing there that makes you think the Tiger Cats are going to have this last push in these last 3 games for the playoffs. I didn't see much there to make me feel optimistic of the Tiger Cats on that one. I think that, I also think we got to give the BC Lions a whole lot of credit there. They were the best team in the league coming into the league season. They're the best team at the midway point, and they're the best team going out of this, looking down the stretch. And they just managed to maintain that consistency with injuries and other things and all a little bit of issues. But, boy, they're a great team. It's hard to find a hole on that team right now. So I don't know.
It is. I mean, it's a really, really good. It's a great team. And yes, it's easy to look like a great team when you're playing Hamilton when they're having a bad game, because when they're having a bad game, they just look awful. There's no midpoint. That's I think the biggest problem with the Ticats. They're either really good and you look at them and go, wow, or they stink to join out.
But the Lions have had a way of making a lot of supposedly decent teams look bad. They made the Riders look bad earlier this year. They, you look at the number of the games they've had that they've just overtaken their team, and they do it like as subtly as you can with a great defensive front like that. They just have a way of making. If you have a couple of problems, a couple of issues, they just make them look even worse. Like, I was kind of surprised that Chris Williams was a non-factor in that game. I didn't see him do much.
No, he really didn't. I mean, he was 5 for 30 for 15 yards. 15
he would have had lots of opportunities to return kickoffs, and they really didn't do much on those. I mean, his punt return. I mean, he only had 1 punt return, and he didn't get any of the kick returns. So I think they're trying not to overuse him, which I agree with, because that is a great danger in the CFL. But if your longest is 15 yards and you only get 30 yards total, that's not saying a lot for your receiving that day. Exactly. I know you have the stats there in front of you. What did Andy Fantuz do? He
had 4 catches for 55 yards, and his long was 26.
So whereas here's the guy who's supposed to be your man, the guy carrying the team, and he really hasn't been able to do that this year. And it's one of those things I said a little earlier about these great free agents going to Hamilton that just sort of end up in oblivion. Sandro DeAndres, we can list all of them. Jason Maas,
Yeah, it really doesn't. It doesn't seem to be somewhere that you want. I mean, even Kevin Iben, a great player, and always one of the standouts for the Toronto Argonauts, goes to Hamilton and is kind of pedestrian.
Yeah, exactly. And that defense, I thought that defense was going to be good. I really.
Yeah.
And then the Riders went in that season opener and they killed them, and they just made them all look so bad. Everybody. I guess we know about the Tiger Cats. But we do know the Lions are for real. I come out of this week saying these guys are for real, and whoever has to go into Vancouver place roof opener or BC place roof opener closed, they're going to have to deal with a pretty tough football team, and it's going to be. I can't see any way they're not going to get to the Grey Cup. Obviously, we know enough in the CFL that things do happen, things do change, and teams do win. I still remember in '89 the Riders beating those. Seemingly unbeatable Edmonton Eskimos to get to the Grey Cup, so it does happen.
Yeah, once you get in, anything can happen, and that's the whole point, is you got to get in, though. So
yes.
There's two teams so far from the West that are in, the Lions and the Stampeders. The Lions had already clinched. Stampeders got in by virtue of beating the, I don't even know the adjective to use, hapless Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
Well, it's funny reading the sports writers in Winnipeg, because I kind of know the guys, and usually it was like putrid and
yeah, they're getting a great use of the thesauruses this year.
And I'm going I've never used putrid to describe the Riders. As bad as things got last year, never quite got to the stage of putrid. But boy, when you watch, and there's no hope there. I really think, as I said, the baddest things got with the Rough Riders last year, and it was a bad season, no hiding from that. We kind of knew on the horizon Brendan Tam was going to come and be general manager, and we kind of thought he might be a bit of a savior and help out by running the show. And they had a quarterback. They had Darian Durant. As much as he's people complain about him here, he is a quarterback. He's a bona fide starting CFL quarterback. The Argos don't even have a bona fide backup now. So they're in trouble for a long, long time. I don't know how they're going to get out of that mess. I don't know what's going to happen with Joe Mack and stuff. And then you watch him play in that first quarter. Holy, that was just bad. I remember, and I hate to take it back to the last August when the Riders played the Argos, and that first half was as abysmal a half as I've ever seen out of a Rough Rider football team. They got totally annihilated by the Argos, and it eventually cost Greg Marshall his job because they played a little bit in the second half, but that first quarter was turnover, mistakes, coaching errors. Everything was just brought out in one horrible quarter of football, and you knew it was over by the end of the first quarter. So there's issues there, but at the same token, I like to say, the Stampeders beat them. The Stampeders went into a stadium that is pretty hard to win. It used to be, or could be.
Well, yeah,
they had to win.
They had to win. Quiet.
Yeah, well, because there was nobody there. I think they were all shopping or something. I think that was another 1 p.m. Eastern time or noon start in Winnipeg. So that's, I like to see if I don't understand the scheduling. Maybe they're trying to avoid the NFL games.
Yeah, I have no clue. I know it's availability. I know it's, you've got a single broadcaster, so you kind of have to go with what they say. But the 25,000 people that, according to the stats, were officially at the game, a lot of them apparently dressed up as empty seats.
There was, and actually, I don't think TSN has as much power as we think over the schedule as we seem to think they do. And I know that it's not based on any sort of stuff. Just sort of talk to people. What I understand is Rogers Centers dictates a lot of the schedule.
Yes, and the Toronto Blue Jays, and although that doesn't count in October because we all know they don't play in October.
Exactly, and they don't play the whole lot in September either, or April or August.
Yeah, that's true. But they're physically there, so it kind of interrupts football.
But even like this, the Riders. I know there was some grumbling going on this week about the short week and stuff. But I understand the Rogers Center wanted a game on a Monday, Thanksgiving Monday, and that's what the Riders had to play. And now they got to travel back-to-back games, which is. Everyone in the CFL has to. The short weeks come with all of them, but it was a tough one. But I know we're getting off topic from the Stampeders and Blue Bombers.
Yeah, there really isn't that much to say about the Stampeders.
No, I think we devoted way too much conversation to them to see what was happening in that game. Good for John Cornish, a great running back. I kind of like those things, and the good teams have foresight. Like look at Calgary. Kevin Glenn comes in there. And they keep him as a backup, and Drew Tate gets up. And they're actually, I think, a better team with Clevin Glenn right now. So Calgary's got something to do with there. But good GMs and good management know how to anticipate things happening down the road. And Calgary, BC do that. They just seem to have the depth there. And you got to give them credit for being able to look far ahead of a short-sighted team like thinking Buck Pierce is going to make it through a season without getting hurt.
Yeah, I mean, and Joey Elliott, I don't get. He's another one of those quarterbacks that can be brilliant one week and then toss 4 interceptions the next.
That's probably a young quarterback. He's being thrown into it, and I keep thinking that Alex Brink can't do the job, and he can't. So they're just basically hanging on by their fingernails, trying to do something to get maybe to the off season where maybe they can get something blown up and start anew. I don't know. There's people in Winnipeg. I read their papers all the time. I know the writers, and I try to look. No one seems to have solutions for what's going on down over there, even though it's really close to Regina.
They're not rebuilding. They're not really doing. You can't really call it a rebuilding phase, but you can't also call it. I mean, they obviously need to be rebuilding because there's not much there. So it's. I mean, I don't know. There's going to be an awful lot of work to do in that off season.
I don't even think rebuild. I think you can't rebuild in the CFL. The margins of profits and the attention what you can make in a team are so slim that rebuilding is almost an option you can't do. You have to just keep building every year, finding talent, keep moving that. A guy like Eric Tillman is very good at that by bringing in guys that keep pushing the talent ahead. And it's sort of, I know rebuilding is the right word. I'm not trying to think of. I'm thinking rebuilding is the word, but they don't even use that word around here. Rebuild. That's almost like
it's a dangerous word, but
yeah, and it's
you almost got to think that.
Well, Winnipeg has to. They have to come up with some way to spin it that. Yeah, we're looking ahead to the future. I don't know, but the present makes the future look pretty bleak.
It does. Another team that's not, speaking of Eric Tillman, his Edmonton Eskimos played really well. They were playing, they've now made the West ridiculously interesting because now we don't know who. We're thinking there's probably going to be a crossover, but we don't know who it could be because it could either be the Riders or the Eskimos.
Exactly. That game did to that on Saturday. And, boy, give credit to the Eskimos. That front four was as ferocious a pass rush as I've seen in quite a while from any team against ours. The Riders' offensive line have been doing pretty well lately, but they collapsed the pocket on Darian Durant at least twice for sacks. There were times that Durant just didn't have a minute to pass. And I didn't really think that Edmonton's front four was going to be that good because all their good players were hurt, but they're coming back. Kerry Joseph is like a teenager out there. Actually, probably 29-year-old. We'll give him that. We'll give him a few years.
Yeah.
He just moves so well. Motivated to play against the Rough Riders. He downplayed all that. But, him and Darian Durant are good friends. He knows some of the guys on the team from 2007. He was a little motivated. Plus, Kerry Joseph's a proud man. He's heard the age jokes. He's heard everything about, he went through the years in Toronto. And don't tell you, and we talked about that a little bit yesterday, because those Toronto years were very tired on him. They added like dog years to his life, because it just, with Bart Andrus and all that stuff, and having to be a leader and realizing this is not what I want to be and where I want to be, and so that took some time off him. But he's had something to prove, and boy, he sure showed it all on which really, I don't think, it was an incredibly glorious fall afternoon for football in Edmonton. It's a beautiful stadium, a beautiful view. It was full of green and yellow and stuff, and it was a great picture postcard day for the CFL that I think people who kind of maybe from Southern Ontario, and you guys don't quite take the CFL with the passion and intensity that takes place out west. You go to a game like that and you understand why it means so much. It was just it was a fun place to be around, a fun place to watch a game, and to see a team with the old cliche, it's back against the wall, come out there and come out firing and win a game it absolutely had to win. And good on Edmonton. Good for them, showing that up, showing Hugh Charles, showing he can still run, and Freddie Stamps still rejuvenated Freddie Stamps and all that stuff. So it's Edmonton is in control of their destiny, and they've altered the destiny of the other teams in this division. So it was a good game for them, but not so good for the Rough Riders, who kind of laid an egg, after the high in the short week. And I think a short week is tough. That's traveling. And Edmonton, people don't quite understand. The Edmonton to Regina trip is probably one of the toughest one we get because most of our flights go through Calgary, and that means it's about a 5-hour flight, but really only takes an hour. And there's only one direct flight that you can fit into your schedule, and that's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so to accommodate that, it takes a lot of work. So other than that, everything goes through Calgary, and it's a long flight. So when they talk about the short work week, the flights are a bit of a challenge because you're in the air a long time, and not in the air, but sitting in the Calgary airport doing nothing.
Yeah.
So
and that's not exactly entertaining for anyone, I can imagine.
Well, in the past, a couple of years, they used to have their team meetings in Calgary. You know, they'd fly to Calgary because they know they're going to Toronto for West Trips. Because the joke is the riders spend more time in the Calgary airport than the Calgary Stampede.
I have heard that joke before, and you know, having now flown through Calgary airport, I mean, it's a very nice airport, but it's not somewhere I'd want to be spending a lot of time.
But I'm going to throw a plug in here. If anybody's got to go lay over an airport, the new Edmonton International Airport is the place to lay over. What an incredible facility I was in. My first time being in there. State-of-the-art chairs. You got little sort of footstools to put your legs up on to relax. Every restaurant you could possibly imagine, different food groups. It's clean. It's modern. There's artwork. I know it's not football, but, boy, if you have to lay over in Edmonton now, because I used to avoid laying over in Edmonton because it was such a mediocre airport, but this one they built now is a modern palace that I was very impressed with today.
Yeah, prepare to be disappointed when you come to Toronto in November.
Yeah, Toronto's done some good stuff. Winnipeg has a nice airport now, too. Winnipeg's really kind of expanded there, so it's very nice. So
yeah,
I know it's not football, but it's part of the life of football.
It is part of the life of football, and especially when you're talking about, you know, the riders having to, you know, that it's part of the reason. Although they did come off a short week having won, unlike the Argonauts who come off a short week having lost.
Yeah.
And then, so they laid a turkey on Thanksgiving and then laid a complete egg again, you know, against Montreal in a game that could have meant so much.
I know.
Like that game, first place is on the line.
That's the theme to a lot of the losing teams. They could have done so much for their this weekend, I guess, their whole seasons if they had won. The losing teams, I think, had more to lose than the winning teams did, except for Edmonton. You know what I mean by that? So I think there was more on the line for the losers, and they just didn't come. You know, they just didn't come through. And you're right, that Thanksgiving Day turkey in Toronto was full. That was a Toronto team that looked like they were trying to get out of town. I don't know what was going on with them. They just didn't seem to want to play very hard. And I know the professional teams always do, but there was something going on with that team that day.
Toronto is missing Ricky Ray. I will give them that. And, you know, there's rumblings that he may be back for Friday's game. Don't hold your breath, Argo fans, but you never know. But, hey, they got Noel Prefontaine back.
Mm-hmm.
And, oh, boy, was it great to have Noel Prefontaine back. You know, his pass attempt didn't do much, but it was the first half. Okay, the first quarter, there's only 2 points scored, both Rouges. Then the next point that scored is a Rouge. And, you know, the joke was, wow, the Toronto Maple Leafs are beating the Montreal Canadiens 2-1 because this is a hockey score in a football game. You can score something other than Rouges. The Argos then go score a touchdown. Montreal scores 2 field goals, so it actually looks like they scored a touchdown, though they haven't. If you're just looking at the box score, that 7 points in the second quarter was a Rouge and 2 field goals. Toronto goes into half winning. Not something the Argos are used to. I mean, granted, it's 9-7, but still, they go into the half beating the Montreal Alouettes. I'm thinking something happened. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the Montreal dressing room at halftime because they came out in the third a team possessed. You know, suddenly players who hadn't been showing up all game, Calvillo's making, you know, great passes and they're actually hitting their targets. And players are showing up where they're supposed to be on their routes, where before they were kind of showing up in random places. You're looking and going, Calvillo's throwing to that nice empty space. I'm pretty sure there should be a player there. There wasn't. And the Argos didn't play any differently in the second half. It was all the Alouettes, which sounds really bad when you're looking at it from an Argos perspective because, yes, they virtually have second place tied up because of the crossover rule, because they've won the season series against the Ticats. They're 4 points ahead. But let's not take anything for granted. They could still end up, they do not have a playoff spot yet. They could end up out of the playoffs.
Yeah. Trolling, yeah, that's true. As a guy who's covered the Alouettes in a couple of Grey Cups games where they trailed at the half, I'm not the least bit surprised to see them come back.
No, it's never surprising.
They have a good way. Mark Hudson does something. And I know halftime adjustments are a little bit overrated, but I think that's coaching for preparation for the week leading up to that halftime adjustment that you make, that you have the guys ready to play to do that kind of, to make it a change at the half. But the Alouettes are great at doing that. Anthony Calvillo is an absolute. There's no one better at it, I don't think, in the league of making those sort of adjustments. But that's just preparation leading up the week. You only got 15 minutes at halftime. It's not you can't change a whole lot of things. You can't go in there and tell them what to do. I just think they just got going a little better than the Argos, and the Argos who the Argos are. So.
Yeah, and I mean, Jarius Jackson is a competent backup. I mean, a 50% passing rating today, not great. 20 for 40 for 239. But you have Anthony Calvillo, who's only 16 for 31 for 255. It was a very average day for Anthony Calvillo. Like, those are very subpar numbers. The Argos should have and could have taken advantage and just did. I mean, great to see Andre Dury back for the Argos. Great to see him being used. It was nice to see a ball go Kenyon Rambo's way as well, because he's one of those pickups that I've personally been waiting to see, because I think he's got a better connection with the type of passer that Ricky Ray is than Jarius Jackson. So he may do better.
But then Anthony Calvillo makes that pass to Jamal Richardson, who turns into a 74-yard touchdown. A great pass, a great play by a great athlete who just turns on the burners and burns them. And then a couple plays later, Shamrock returns one for a pick. And it's pretty well game over after that, wasn't it?
After that point, the wind was out of the sails. The Rogers Center, which had been fairly loud, got ridiculously quiet. And it's hard. It's also hard to see that, kick returns, punt returns. I mean, I'm a huge Shadow fan. I think it's great that the 3 consecutive 3,000 all-purpose yard seasons is amazing. But with a taped thumb, I'm not entirely sure how well he is handling the punt returns. He's fumbled a couple of them, he bobbled a couple of them, and you gotta think that his body isn't going to be liking getting those kind of hits, because every time you're taking the ball on a return, you're going to get hit.
Yep, there's no avoiding that. That's for sure. That's a good point.
I mean, that's a way to shorten your career, as far as I'm thinking.
Because I did a lead-in before that Thanksgiving Day game, was what they're going to do against Chad Owens, and then Chad Owens didn't do much against him. And I thought, well, that was a good way to cover him. But I think the murmurings were, is he hurt? Is he sore? Is he something going on?
Well, he's got a taped thumb. I mean, that's all I can see. But there is tape on a thumb. So, the question is how much is that affecting the performance? And, should he maybe rest a game where it's not quite as important, rather than risk turning this into something a lot more serious not having him in the playoffs?
They can't sit him because they need him to get to the playoffs. He's kind of a big key contributor to that whole offense and stuff. So, because I said I didn't really see a lot of the game. Was he even involved in the game? I don't think he was he? What did he do today?
No, I mean, he had 7 punt returns for 60 yards, one really good kick return for 31 yards that could have gone for actually a lot more, and then a couple of catches for 23 yards. It wasn't a great game. I think where Toronto's really hurting is the loss of Chad Calgary. They don't have a bona fide running back right now.
Exactly. I couldn't even name who the running back was. So that'd be a stretch.
Riggs would be the...
Gerald Riggs. Sorry, that's it. I guess.
Yep.
But the only reason I know his name is because of his dad. So that guy's got a way to go to make a name for himself in the league right now. But
yeah, and it's not. I mean, there's no disparagement against him. He's young. He is a placeholder. He wasn't meant to play yet. So, that's not something that we can blame too much on them. But there's a lot to come. I mean, I think it's fortunate for the Argos. They have a fairly short week. They're playing on Friday, and they're playing the Bombers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very, very lucky
Bombers
schedule.
cure ails. That used to be the Rough Riders. Rough Riders were a good thing for what ails you last year.
Well, unfortunately, then they play the Riders, and the Riders seem to have the Argos number. So let's see if maybe they can avenge that Thanksgiving Day turkey. But I'm not holding my breath there.
Here. Like, they got back-to-back home games, the final 2 home games of the year. There's going to be 34,000. I was thinking it's going to be either it could be prairie winter weather or it could be beautiful. Today was 18 degrees here. You couldn't ask for a nicer day. So the Riders are figuring that the schedule's tilted a little bit in their favor right now. They got 2 of their final 3 home games at home against Montreal.
This is against Montreal, though.
Yeah,
but it's so easy.
No, it's not that easy. And Anthony Calvillo's is, but there's Roy Shivers used to say, he's a famous general manager, that every week, there's a couple times a year you're going to get your butt handed to you in the CFL. It happens, even to the good. And maybe this is the Riders' game that they got their butts handed to them for that, and you can kind of build off that, because it happens in the CFL. I don't know what it is. Every team has a couple of a year, so that might happen to the Riders.
The rest of the games look, Edmonton had a great game against Saskatchewan. Let's see how they do against BC.
Well, and the thing is, you mentioned Ricky Ray a few times. I heard Ricky Ray's name more times in Edmonton this weekend than any before, and it's still all defending people they're still wondering why he was traded. They're still believing that that team was destined for much greater things with Ricky Ray, the quarterbacks, and we wouldn't even be being forced to see what Kerry Joseph is having to do now if Ricky Ray was around. So it's Ricky Ray is gone from Edmonton, but he's not even close to being forgotten. So even though in Toronto they need him back from injuries, the Eskimo fans are still believing that Ricky Ray should be there and still leading that team. But Eric Tillman had his reasons, and they all agreed with him. So I guess it's all been. I heard them thousands of times this weekend, so I'm kind of a little bit Ricky Ray overload. But it was. It's kind of a fun weekend. Edmonton's a great city to visit.
It is. And the last game that's coming up this weekend, of course, because you got Winnipeg at Toronto, then Edmonton at BC are the 2 Friday games, and then there's 2 Saturday games. So there's no Sunday games. This is nice. Montreal, Saskatchewan is a 3:30 start. It's a weird start time, people. It's a 3:30 Eastern start. Just be aware of that. And then Hamilton at Calgary. So you got Burris, who has clearly been a Jekyll and Hyde all season. He either's great or he's horrible. And going up against your form routine, you got that extra pressure to be great.
He does, and Burris will want you. And Burris will go in there. He's he's very popular among the media. He's a great interviewer. He's a very great talker. He's very gracious. He gives you lots of stuff, as we call in the business, gold. You kind of get a lot of gold out of him. And so he's going to be in there. He's going to be the focus of attention, which he's going to love. And he's going to be ready to play. And I hate to say it, I saw this kind of stuff out of Henry Burris when he got lost his job last year. His inability to complete those wide passes to the sidelines and overthrowing receivers, and the bad Henry overtaking the good. And John Huffnagel recognized that and kind of got rid of him. So the Tiger Cats took a chance on him. But maybe they're going to Calgary and the mountains in the background, another beautiful stadium to watch a game with a good rabid crowd will get him going, because he was very popular in Calgary and he still is. And he's like to see him do good things there, but boy, it's going to be hard to beat the Stampeders in Calgary on a night. That's a night game too, so it's
and especially when you're playing with the Ticats defense.
Oh, they got to bring them too, don't they?
Yeah, that's going to make it. I mean, Henry can do whatever he wants, but if that defense doesn't show up, they're kind of screwed.
Oh man, I don't know what's going to be ahead of that defense either, because it's also. They're not very good, and they're getting old. A lot of the things you don't really want.
No, it's going to be hard.
Actually, the Rider game's only a 1:30 start here, so that's kind of early on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's a really weird start considering there's 2 games, but there's going to be a little bit of time in between the games, and you can grab dinner.
They had a Saturday night game here a couple of weeks back with BC, and it was electric. It was just like the perfect atmosphere for a football game. It was just. People had all day to, let's say, prepare. For the game.
One of those games, huh?
Yeah, and they were loud. It was from the moment you walked into the stadium, they were loud and they were giving it, and it was a fun place to be. And I kind of thought this is a nice, because they hadn't played a night home game in so long. It was really kind of weird because the way the scheduling is working out and stuff. Like I think it'd gone back to maybe 2008 since they played a Saturday night game. So it was neat to be under the lights. We kind of get used to it. You think you're under the lights all the time, but it's been a while, so it's a lot of fun here at night games. But the afternoon games, it's not quite. They don't have quite as much time to put on paint and put carve their watermelons and put on their green.
Isn't it getting a bit cold for the watermelons? Really?
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't know what the temperature is, but
are they in season still?
I don't know what they find them. Actually, I met a guy who's a Rider fan who was going to a game, and he brought his watermelon on his carry-on baggage because he didn't trust him to put it into the regular baggage because it might get squished. So some of these guys, this was to a road game, but he would go there.
That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I mean, see, this is why it's great to talk to people from all over the league, because you hear the best stories from the most random
and I have
places.
To tell you. And he is a man of girth, too. He is a pretty big fellow. And I'm thinking, I'm glad I wasn't sitting beside him. And he had his watermelon in his carry-on bag. And I went, really? Because I was teasing him about it. And they wear their Rider jerseys everywhere. Right? They go on the road, they only wear, I mean, I know guys that have...
Well, there were Rider jerseys at you guys are about a week late, but okay, hi.
Yeah, kind of. Oh, in Edmonton, it was unbelievable. You look at the top deck, it was green. I was talking to Brendan Tammon, who was down at field level yesterday, and he said, you just look up there, and it's a loud game. When they, early in the game, there was a fumble recovery by Craig Butler, and he ran it back about 67 yards. And the place, it sounded like a home game. It was just that loud for Craig Butler. And even Hugh Charles says, we know we got to get ahead of these guys because their crowds here, they're going to go loud, they're going to go crazy, and it's going to be all for the Riders, and all of a sudden things change. So
yeah, you take them out of it early, and that's the only way to deal with them, really.
Yep. Pretty well, and they did that pretty well because then Kerry came back with about 20 unanswered points to slam the door in the Riders.
Which does keep them quiet. So let's see how they do with a couple home games. It's going to be a wild ride to the finish, out of the playoffs, although Winnipeg needs everybody else to lose out and them to win out, so it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah, I think it's good. And, that's maybe the nice thing about the way the CFL is, even 3 games a team as bad as Winnipeg can still have a chance. But I think there was one year Ottawa getting their 5-13 in the playoffs. So it can happen. Actually, Greg Marshall was the coach of that, was a player on that team. And so that's, we're showing our age here a little bit. But
that's okay.
Maybe our grasp of history would probably be a better word of that than age.
Yeah, that's a much better word than age. It's our grasp. We have a great grasp of history.
Yeah, so maybe they realize, and maybe that's what Winnipeg's rallying cry. Oh, the Ottawa Rough Riders.
Yeah, and more good news. They're coming back, so we're going to be a 9-team league again. This is a good thing that's happening. So it's going to be a wild end to the season.
Well, yeah, I'm not as up on the 9 team. I think it's 2 or none in my mind. I think we're.
I agree, but I'd like to see Ottawa back. So
I like the symmetry. I know I like Ottawa, but I like the symmetry to the way the season goes. To 4 teams get a bye week, and when to week 16, we all know what the exact same records are. We'd have to deal with all the other
extra stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of math involved.
And if Mark Cole has it, he's going to say, "Yeah, I know. There's no place to put a 10th team." I understand that completely. But in my idealistic Murray world, there's 10 teams in the CFL, and it's 5 in the West and 5 in the East.
Yep, and Winnipeg is one of those Western teams.
Exactly. Actually, I'm going to have to get my head around that to get Winnipeg back in the West. I'm almost thinking they are the Eastern Division team now because East, it's just kind of
it's back up on you.
Ingrained. Yeah, but I think it'll be good to have Ottawa in the league. I think there's a lot of history there, and one guy says, let them call them the Rough Riders. We don't care. They're still the Rough Riders out here, but I have a feeling they're going to find their own name and their own identity, which will be...
My vote is still for the thieving politicians. I'd like to put that out there.
Seasoned politicians?
Thieving politicians.
Oh okay. All right.
We've already got senators, so thieving politicians seem to fit.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thought.
I like my vote. It's out there. I don't think it's going to be selected. I've put it forward to the Ottawa group, and I'm never going to hear back, but it'll be fun. Can't wait, and let's just see where this wild ride finally takes us.
Well, we know where we're going to be.
Yeah,
we're going to be in Toronto, won't we? And who was there in '89? The Rough Riders. Who was there in 2007? The Rough Riders.
Yep.
So, is there any reason to say you can't write it off? And Destiny is a strange little ride. It'll take you a lot of places. So I think
the Lions might have a little bit to say about that, though.
Oh, I think they're on the field. But when momentum happens, and then that green and white and those watermelons and all those things start to get rolling, you never can count against the Rough Riders. And I'm saying that even as a fact I've only lived here for like 30 years. So.
No, and it's true, and you never know. It could be great. So, but thank you so much. I've been speaking with Murray McCormick from the Regina Leader Post.
Hello, football fans, and welcome to another edition of Rouge Radio. This is the CIS portion. I'm Kevin Garbuio, and I'm joined today by Andrew Wadden from Canadian CIS University Countdown, brought to you by Krown. Andrew is the co-host and analyst for that program. Andrew, take us through this week in the West. You guys were doing the Calgary game. We talked last week, myself and Donovan Bennett, about Calgary setting up for a letdown, but the real letdown this week, Regina losing to UBC. What happened there?
Well, Mark Mueller wasn't in the lineup, and that's huge. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the West. Him and Eric Gillespie basically would be a 1-2 or 2-1, depending on how you want to look at it. But it's a big blow, obviously, when you lose your leader like Mueller. And you could see that last season with Regina as well. They weren't would have been a much better team last year if they were able to have Mueller behind center. UBC, though, I mean, they started off their season poorly and really couldn't bounce back from things, and they're trying to now. Billy Green and the offense are kind of coming around a bit. They're running the ball a little bit more, which is more of their strength. But as far as the game is concerned, UBC kind of just got to them early. Some turnovers didn't help Regina as well, and in the end, UBC was able to pull off, I wouldn't say an upset, but definitely shocked a lot of people around the CIS with the win.
Well, what can you tell us about Mark Mueller? Mueller's in the conversation right now to be the West representative for the Creighton nominee. Can you tell us on his future right now and his status is? Are there regular season games in doubt, or will he be out in the playoffs?
Yeah, well, I mean, he did speak to my colleague Jim Mullen via Twitter over the week, basically saying that he wants to get in there. I mean, a player is going to say that, right? Anybody who wants to compete is going to want to play, but from the looks of it, it looks like Mueller will sit out the remainder of the regular season and start in the playoffs. I mean, obviously don't quote me on that because, someone like Mark, especially missing a full season last year, when your CIS career is only so long, so you want to get in as much as you can, but, he's going to have to be healthy for Regina to win ball games, and I think he knows that as well. So I think the best thing for Mueller probably would be to sit out until the postseason now. They do have a couple of big games coming up, though, that they're going to have to take care of business. So, maybe he'll sit out next week and then return the following week. I think it kind of all depends on the result of the game next week. And they face off. I've got to take a look at it in my schedule right now. But, they're one of those things where if Mueller's in the lineup, they definitely have a better chance to win. And I think he knows that and everyone knows that. But at the same time, if he's broken, they're going to have to look at things realistically, because you do not want to have, a broken Mark Mueller going into the postseason. And, of course, next week, as I pull up my schedule here, they play Calgary. So, it's at home for them, but it's going to be a tough test. I could see Mueller returning for the final game of the season against Alberta, but, he'll probably sit out the next two. And then if they can pull one, maybe two victories out of that, although Calgary will be a tough hill for them to climb. But if they can get at least one out of those next two, they'll guarantee themselves a playoff spot, and then healthy Mueller can possibly guarantee them, or at least give them a better chance to win come the postseason.
And the other Saskatchewan team, the Saskatchewan Huskies, they gutted out a 44-39 win against Manitoba, which was a huge victory, both now at 3-3 records. I'm looking at the box score, and you see Manitoba only having 13 first downs, 346 yards of total offense. Saskatchewan, 44 first downs, 625 yards. How was the score so close?
That's a good question. Turnovers, definitely. But I'll tell you what, Chase Bradshaw had just a phenomenal game for the Huskies. I'm making everybody forget about Drew Burko. Tosses for over 400 yards on the day. Just an enormous effort from him. What a fantastic game. The Huskies scored 28 points in the final 15 minutes to come behind and take it. What was possibly one of the games of the year now. Of course, with the win, Husky is 3-3, and they hold the tiebreaker over the Bisons, who are also at 3-3 on the season. And that tiebreaker they hold by a single point. So big win there by Sasky. And turnovers will kill you. And in the end, it killed the Bisons. And Bradshaw and company were able to pull out the W.
Interesting matchup there. Moving on forward, moving into the OUA. Another upset, another big matchup. Guelph against Queens. Guelph trailing in that game, coming back against Queens. And historically, Queens' defense is usually, once they're up, they stay up with Pat Tracy as defensive coordinator. How does Guelph come back against Queens and do what they did, scoring 16 unanswered points in the second half?
I can only go by what I've been reading about that game. We're trying to put together the highlight packages for the Krown Canadian University Countdown show for this week, and we do not have currently the Queens Guelph one, so I haven't seen any video just yet. Mind you, I haven't ducked over to the Queens or the Guelph websites to see if they've have any, but what a game for Guelph. I mean, this is a team in Queens that earlier in the season I was, kind of tooting their horn a little bit. I'm a big fan of Billy McPhee, Ryan Gramberg, great running back, and Justin Champlain, of course, has connections to BC, his dad being the offensive coordinator for the BC Lions. But, that Queens team and Guelph very well matched up, and Guelph, they've got something going for them right now, and they have this never say die attitude. They went into Western, or they played, they were able to beat Western, and then with this one coming, I think it was 30 unanswered points or something like that Guelph scored. So, they're able to do it because I think they're just working as one right now. We had Donovan Bennett from The Score, who obviously is a big OUA insider, on our show last week, and he was telling us how Guelph, they're very focused and everybody's kind of working as one, and they seem to be clicking right now, and that's exactly what they did over the weekend. Huge win for them. I don't know if I necessarily want to call it an upset per se, because they're pretty evenly matched, those two teams, but I think maybe early in the season, people like myself kind of jumped on that Queens bandwagon, but I'm actually kind of jumping over to the Griffins bandwagon right now because I really like what I'm seeing out of Jazz Lindsay and the offense that surrounds him for the Griffins. They probably could have used a little defense on the day this weekend, but their offense was able to pull it out, and what a great victory for them. And I'll tell you what, they're going to move up the rankings this week in the top 10, that's for sure.
Definitely. Last week they were barely in the top 10 despite beating Western. Questions about that victory, saying Western's quarterbacks were out. They were down to their third stringer, and they blew the lead. Coming back against Queens, and like you said, they were down 28-3, come back, win 33-28. Jazz Lindsay in his second year, putting up very efficient performances, not so much in yardage, but just not turning the ball over and giving his team a chance. And also moving on in the OUA from a team that we're talking about a team on the upswing with Guelph. Team that was supposedly dying is Ottawa. Next thing you know, the overthrow of the coach with Coach Gary Echeverry in the turnover. Ottawa now starting to string some wins together, winning against Waterloo 61-0.
Who would have saw that? When we started looking at the scores over the weekend, and I kind of had to double take when I saw that. Just excellent effort there from the GGs, and you got to keep in mind though that this is a team that had, I believe it's 21. Starters return from last season, something like that, or 21 guys that have been with the team for a long time, and they're a veteran group that just wasn't responding to Gary Echeverry. Of course, they make the coaching change, and from what I'm hearing from sources is that they're kind of doing the coaching by committee. The players are the ones that have figured out their offense. Of course, they dropped that double wing offense that just wasn't working for them under Echeverry. Now they've rattled off 2 straight victories, and they could start getting into playoff consideration if they can get themselves another win. And it's a team that really was a lot better than what they look like, or what they showed at least early on in the season. And then they made the coaching change, and it seems that the players are responding. I mean, it's not really a big opponent in taking down Waterloo, but the way they did it just shows you that this team was definitely a lot better than what we originally thought they were.
Well, with this week coming up and Ottawa now in the picture, obviously they need to handle their business next week. They have to win. They're playing against Western, not an easy matchup. U of T, they have to win. That's also a tough matchup. They're playing against Queens. And Laurier, they have to win, and they're playing against McMaster. So those are the bubble teams that we have there. It's pretty interesting right now who their opponents are to get into the playoffs.
You know what I mean, and I think you can chalk a loss for all 3 of those games in terms of the big boys playing against the little guys there, and it's obviously going to be a tough task for Ottawa. I mean, one thing that Ottawa really can pull out of this season right now is, playing a little bit of spoiler. Like you said, they do have to play against Western next week at home, though, so they do have that going for them. Western may not be, the Western that we've seen in the past, but they do have a lot of weapons. Garrett Sanvito, I mean, possibly the best running back in all of Canada right now. So it's going to be tough for Ottawa. I mean, I would give them, an outside shot. But, I don't really see them pulling it off against Western next week. It's going to be a tough one.
I agree. That's going to be a really interesting matchup. And the other one is that York has to play against Guelph, and Guelph needs to win that. So all across, if it stays as it is right now, Laurier will be in at that 6th spot, and everyone was saying about how this team, despite how young they are, was a team in the decline, and this will be a down year. Still making the playoffs is impressive for a team that's supposedly supposed to be going downhill.
Yeah, and it's Laurier's got some decent pieces. I mean, they're one of those teams though. And you see it amongst the whole CIS. There's the contenders and there's the pretenders. And you got to put Laurier in that pretender sort of group. I mean, they're not in the upper echelon of the OUA. The Max, the Guelphs, and Queens, and possibly can put Western into that conversation. Though I kind of think that Western put into that conversation because they are Western, and they're kind of like the New York Yankees of the CIS, basically. Actually, kind of more like the Toronto Maple Leafs of the CIS, to actually put it in a better perspective, considering that they are so well renowned, but they don't really win all the time. So the Golden Hawks are, again, they're middle of the pack sort of OUA team. I mean, they get themselves into the playoffs. In my opinion, they get themselves into the playoffs. That's a successful season for them. Because I just don't see, a team like Laurier, a team like Ottawa, I mean, even Toronto, being able to, step up against a team like McMaster, Guelph, or Queens.
Well, especially since Laurier won the Vanier Cup, but that was with Potasic as the OC. Since losing Potasic to McMaster, they haven't really been able to do that much on offense. They haven't seemed to have as much firepower as they have had in the past.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, exactly. And, you lose key pieces, not only players, but coaches can be key pieces as well. And, you lose a key piece like that too, McMaster. I mean, look what McMaster's doing now. It obviously helps that they have guys like Kyle Quinlan behind center for them. But, coaching goes a long way. And when you're grooming kids or, young men, like the guys that play in the CIS, you kind of have to have those mentors, those guys that, know what they're talking about. And, sometimes skill is obviously one thing, but sometimes just, being prepared is another thing as well. And then that's what a good coach will do for you. And obviously you can see that McMaster, not only do they have the skill, they're also very well prepared.
Well, speaking about great coaching and moving on forward, we're moving to Quebec. Montreal versus Laval this week, and you have two of the best coaches in the CIS with Danny Machocha in Montreal, Coach Glenn Constantine in Laval. Laval losing this weekend by by a fraction of a point. Montreal 23, Laval 20. Montreal unable to defeat them by the 20 points needed. So Laval now holding serve in the Dunsmore. What does that mean for home field advantage in the Dunsmore playoffs?
Oh, it's massive. I mean, you can see what just happened over the last couple of weeks. I mean, look at the way Laval handled Montreal at home. Then they have to go down south to play against Montreal, and then gave them a good game. But it's a different Laval squad when they've got the 18,000 people there. It's just a much different environment to come into, and obviously the Rouge are used to playing in front of their home crowd, and they're able to get these home field advantages because of having that big crowd and making it an environment that is very tough to play in. So it's massive for the Rouge, and any team that's going to have to go in there to face them is not only going to have to face off against the team on the field, but also the team in the crowd, and that's those guys are just huge for the Rouge. And I mean, Montreal is a good team, but they have to dig deep if they're going to want to win on the road, especially in a place like Laval.
Yeah, at the bottom right now of the Quebec standings, we have Concordia, who had to self-report themselves for using ineligible players. They beat McGill. This hurts McGill now. It's opportunities to make the playoffs. We've talked about in the past on the show, especially with Mo Khan, about how McGill's striving to make the playoffs this year, or else they might go over to the OUA if they can't compete. Losing to Concordia like that has to be a death blow for their playoff hopes.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, that's a win they've got to get. It's unfortunate that Concordia had to give up their wins because of the ineligible player, but I mean, ask UBC about losing wins, and they'll tell you how much it hurts. But big blow for McGill, and I said it on our television show. I'm not a fan of McGill moving over to the OUA. I don't think it'll help them at all. I think they're better suited in the queue, keeps the balance of the conference at 6 teams. One of those. this week, of course, was massive for McGill. They had to get the win. They didn't get it. And now they're probably going to be looking on the outside, looking in when it comes to playoff time. But, the program has had, some success this year. And I think moving forward that, like I said, they'd be better suited in the Q. Of course, that's just my opinion. I would not like to see them in the OUA. I think they would just be sitting kind of where they are now in the Q. I think they could kind of move themselves up into a playoff team in the next couple of seasons. But, in the OUA, I mean, we were just talking about, you've got teams like Laurier, you've got teams like Ottawa, I mean, even Toronto to a lesser degree that, are building up their programs right now. And I mean, even Windsor's in that, discussion as well. So you throw McGill in there and, I don't even know if they're quite in that same territory as, some of those teams I mentioned in the O. So, they're probably better suited to be in the Q. And, this week, of course, big blow for their season this year, but moving forward, aspirations of making the playoffs next year should definitely be in McGill's sights.
Agree that with their new coaching staff, they should be able to start making the move moving forward, and especially with that alumni support. Again, talking about Concordia had to self-report similar to what UBC did last year, lose with all those losses. That affected the AUS. So X now, given that win despite losing to Concordia, they now moved up to 2 and 3, tied for second in the AUS with St. Mary's. This weekend, Acadia defeated X by a score of 47-26, clinching first in the AUS. We now have a 3-way tie for second or fourth, depending on how you look at it in the AUS. What do you see with that coming out of that? I know Acadia's strength. Do you see any other team being able to topple the Axemen this year?
No, not at all. I mean, this conference to me is just one team, and that's it. It's Acadia. They're really the only team in the whole conference that can kind of hang with, some of the bigger teams around the CIS. So, I to be honest with you, I don't even really think it matters what plays out in the AUS because it's all going to come down to Acadia coming out of it and moving on. I believe the crossover this year is Canada West and Ontario. So Acadia will, have to face off against the winner of the Q. Like I said, I don't think that any of the other teams in the AUS could even come close to, being in the same sort of ballpark as as Laval or someone like that. Acadia is just hands down the best team in the conference. And, it's unfortunate because there have been some good programs in the AUS. But, again, these things work in cycles. And at the moment right now, Acadia seems to be the cream of the crop. And, I would be very surprised if anyone can knock them off the top there.
Yeah, I was working the game this weekend on Axe TV, and you see the teams like Axe, and you see them losing potential, but unable to grasp it right now. And it seems a problem in the AUS watching Acadia and their success right now is that they're still not on all cylinders, which is a positive that they still have room to improve, but they don't really have that foil to bring the best out of them, much like they had with St. Mary's in the past, where you have that team that we have to beat St. Mary's, and we'll see next week if they get up to beat St. Mary's, already knowing they have nothing left to play for in the regular season.
Well, they better get up because they're going to have a big task ahead of them moving forward. And maybe that is the problem with Acadia right now. Maybe they're just the opponents they're playing are just too weak for them to play against. I mean, maybe it's one of those things that maybe we look at Acadia possibly moving over to the Q, although I doubt that would happen. But yeah, it's hard to get up for games when you're miles ahead of the other team, and it's like I said, it's unfortunate that the programs in the AUS right now are kind of suffering a little bit, but things do work in cycles, and I'm sure that those schools like St. Mary's and St. FX and Mount Allison, obviously they're going to want to improve, and hopefully that they'll take the proper steps moving forward to do so.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Andrew. Andrew Wadden from Krown CIS University Countdown on Shaw TV. And where else can we see this, Andrew?
You can see it nationally. It's just basically on Shaw television here in Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, and Saskatoon. It's also broadcast on Cogeco in Kingston, Ontario. And then if we don't reach out to anywhere where you are, then you can always check it out on YouTube. Just search Krown Canadian University Countdown.
Hey, you. Yeah, you with that sandpaper and paintbrush getting ready to sand and paint that wooden fence again this year, when you could be sitting back, relaxing on your patio and watching your neighbors do that work. Get rid of that wood fence and easily install a new low-maintenance resin fence that lasts. Visit Keter.com. Keter.com for videos, product information, and more. You can find this fence at some Costco's across North America and always at Costco.ca with shipping right to your door. Keter.com.
Welcome to the CJFL report on RougeRadio.com. I'm John DeNapoli, and with me this week is CJFL and BCFC media coordinator Ryan Waters.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Ryan, the playoffs got underway in the PCFC with a big upset. The OFC crowned a first-time champion, and the BCFC ended its regular season this past weekend with a couple of blowouts. Well, we're going to start in the OFC, and the London Beefeaters were trying to dethrone the two-time defending champion OFC champs, the Hamilton Hurricanes. This one started slow right from the get-go. Weather was a factor in southwestern Ontario. It was cold and rainy all day long, and Zach Madero's single in the opening quarter is all the scoring there was. 1-0 London at the end of one, and a very defensive-minded game. And neither team can get any offense going because of the weather. In the second quarter, only the conceded safety from the Hamilton Hurricanes made it 3-0 for the home side. So just a 3-0 ugly affair in the first half, and a real close game right to the vest. In the second half, though, it opened up, and the visiting Hamilton Hurricanes were able to score twice. 2 touchdown passes from Kyle Johnson to Danny Parr made the score 14-6 at the end of 3, and everything looked like it was in control, and that's where the home side eventually opened things up. Running back Joel Klubine scored a touchdown and ended the day with 25 carries for 108 yards on the day, and they got the winning score on a Josh Woodman 80-yard punt return for a touchdown, and that put them ahead to stay. They conceded another safety to make the final score 19-6 in London at TD Waterhouse Stadium. On the day,
1916. It was 1916 was the score. You bring up some real good points, and it's interesting to note that just 2 weeks ago these two teams played, and London beat up Hamilton by the score of 61-21. So on paper, and if you judge by that game, it should have been another blowout. But, you know, as you mentioned, Hamilton coming off back-to-back championships, and it was nice to see that it was such a close game. You never want to see a final as a lopsided affair. And to have London beat them by just the 3 points is certainly a good matchup. And kudos to Hamilton, though, in that rain, as you mentioned, John. That rain was just awful for both teams, but both teams played fairly well in that ball game. And then London coming out with that 1916 victory and dethroning, as you mentioned, Hamilton. So it'll be fun to watch London heading to the PFC winner.
Yeah, they got some talent, with their two-headed horse in the backfield of Joel Klubine and Kyle Woldenberg-Puda, who didn't even see a carry in this game. So whoever comes out of the PCFC game next week are going to have their hands full trying to stop that two-headed monster in the backfield. And then, I think might be the MVP right now in the entire CJFL, Zach Maderos, the kicker/punter, who effortlessly kicks him out of trouble when he needs to get him out of trouble, and can make some real long field goals. So it's a real weapon to have for them, and easily their MVP this year on special teams and overall, I think, on the team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as you know, in any kind of level, any championship game usually comes down to the kicker, whether it's a punt in the last second to try to pin a team deep, or a field goal, or anything like that. And when London has a guy like that, boy, they're certainly got to be one of the favorites. But, over in the PFC, if it comes down to Saskatoon or Regina, both those teams have very good running games, including the Hilltops, who we'll talk about here in just a second, but they were able to get it done once again on the ground. So at this time of the year, you do need a good running game, and I think London has that, and Saskatoon certainly has that. Regina was shocked everybody. I'll let you intro that, John. And then in the BCFC, there's been a lot of good runners as well. So at this time of the year, you need a good running game because you never know what Mother Nature will throw at you.
Yeah, speaking of the BCFC, we're going to turn our attention over your way out in the West Coast, and with the Vancouver Island under their season with a 9-0-1 mark with another big victory this weekend.
Yeah, another day at the office for that offense. Just so good. Jordan Yanis is across the country. I think everybody knows that name by now in junior football ranks. And just another, as I mentioned, day at the office, over 300 yards, a number of touchdowns, 5 touchdowns through the air. They did give their backup guy a couple snaps, and he threw 2 touchdown passes. But Yanis, another 4. Michael Shaper caught 4 passes, another 4 touchdown passes for Shaper. Boy, they beat up the Rebels 57-7, and the Rebels just coming off a tremendous performance from their tailback. Speaking of runners, Greg Morris, who ran over 400 yards in a game 2 weeks ago against Kamloops Broncos, setting a new CJFL single game record with that 405 yards on the ground. But the Raiders were able to shut Greg down completely, pretty much, and really, deflects their muscle, if you will, going into the postseason. Yeah, they're 9-0-1. That one tie. There is no overtime in CJFL, so they completed that tie. That was way back in week 2 against the Langley Rams. And if you look at the records, if you look at the stats, if you look at the stories in the BCFC all year long, we're headed for a Langley Vancouver Island Cullen Cup final on October the 27th. But you just never know what happens in playoff football.
Yeah, the other big game in the BCFC with playoff implications had the Langley Rams taking on the Okanagan Sun, who, unlike their record, 3-7 this year, and not indicative of the past success of the Okanagan Sun.
Yeah, they had a lot of new faces, though, John. The 22 guys just out of high school, a brand new head coach who just got to Kelowna in May, coaching staff, new guys at different positions, so rookie quarterback. A lot of things against the Okanagan Sun, and a new unbalanced schedule of the BCFC, where typically the last countless number of years, you always face one team at home and one team on the road. So you face each team 2 times. Well, this time, the Okanagan Sun, for example, had to face Langley and Vancouver Island Raiders 6 times over the course of the 10-game schedule. So those 2 teams, the top teams in the conference. And, yeah, they took a large hit, if you will. And, you look at that game in Kelowna on Saturday. It was a wet, rainy game, and really it was no contest. Langley was just tremendous. 2 90-yard kickoff for touchdowns from Jordan Lennon and Nick Downey in that football game, a number of large runs by the Rams, and they were really firing on all cylinders, and they clinched second place in the conference with that victory.
And in the final game in the BCFC, the previously winless Chilliwack Huskers ended the season on a high note with a win over the Kamloops Broncos.
And I'm really happy for head coach Tyson St. James and that organization. They hadn't won a regular season game since 2009. So a lot of guys, and kudos to the guys that stuck around and the job that they did to recruit just to get a football team, just a number of players to get on that team, just to field a Chilliwack Huskers team here in 2012, and they came away with a 17-10 victory over Kamloops. Again, rain, a lot of rain this weekend across the country, John. No difference in Chilliwack, where it turned into basically a mud bowl in Chilliwack, but it's nice to see the Huskers win a football game. The game meant absolutely nothing in the standings, but it meant a whole heck of a lot to the Huskers and the Huskers organization and their fans, finally snapping the streak, if you will, and winning their first regular season game since 2009.
Yeah, it's the kind of game to end the season that you hope they can build upon and for a better 2013 campaign in Chilliwack.
Yeah, and they have a lot of young guys on that football team. They only lose one guy to graduation. And yeah, they don't have a ton of guys there, but it's a good building block, and I had a chance to talk to Tyson St. James, the head coach, a number of times over the course of the year, and he really liked the progression of the team from the very first game where they gave up 64 points against Kamloops, oddly enough, to week 10 and a victory against the Broncos. He really likes the steps that they took, and I had a chance to see them firsthand a couple of times, and you can see the building blocks that they have, and going into next year, they should be a lot better going into 2013.
We're going to turn our attention over to the PFC semifinals, and there was a massive upset Sunday afternoon in Calgary where the Colts were facing the Regina Thunder, and I'm going to take you a little bit through this game, and started kind of slow a little again, another defensive kind of slow game in the first quarter where Regina took the lead on a 21-yard pass play from Asher Hastings to Camille Langamudier to make it 7-0 Regina, and Calgary answered right back from Richard Sawatowski, touchdown pass from Derek Cooper, and it tied the game at 7. And Calgary looked like they were going to get back on track and dominate the football game like we all expected they would. However, Regina took the lead back when Clayton Cook hauled in a 37-yard touchdown pass from Asher Hastings, and it made it 14-7. And Ben Coot extended the lead with a 32-yard field goal, making it 17-7 at that time. And just like we've been saying all year, where's the Calgary offense when you need it? And Chuck Okafor, of all guys, comes back and cuts the deficit to 3 on a 1-yard touchdown run with a couple of minutes remaining in the half. And Joseph caught a 36-yard touchdown pass from Jeremy Long, and next thing you know, Calgary takes a 21-17 lead going into the half. Now, in the second half, it was all defense up until the final minute of the fourth quarter, and there was Will Heward hauling in a 4-yard touchdown pass from Asher Hastings with just 17 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter, and with the extra point getting tacked on, it was 24-21 Regina with, like I said, 17 seconds to go. Too late, Jeremy Long heaves down the field trying to get something going, and they missed one at about the 30-yard line that would have put them in field goal range. And then the final heave went incomplete, and it ended the game in probably the biggest upset this year in the CJFL. Final score from McMahon Stadium in Calgary. So 24-21, Regina upsets the number 1 team in the country. And Ryan, I think we're all in a little disbelief this weekend with the big upset in Calgary.
The only people that aren't in that same category are the Regina Thunder. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to their head coach, Erwin Kempner, their defensive coordinator, Sean McCall. They looked over video film for a week and a half, anticipating a matchup with Calgary and being able to go into McMahon Stadium and beat an undefeated team. That is, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, really, for that Thunder football team. Coming into the game 4-4, that's where they finished over the regular season. Now they have to go back on the road again and go to Saskatoon to compete in that PFC final coming up next Sunday. But boy, I tell you what, anything, as I mentioned earlier, can happen in playoff football, and especially in junior football. And those guys were ready. They competed so well against the Calgary Colts team. And you might look at the Colts saying maybe they were looking too far ahead. Maybe they're anticipating a matchup with Saskatoon in the PFC final the following. Maybe they were looking past Regina, and Regina really hit them in the mouth.
Yeah, I think they got bit by the proverbial looking ahead to the next week's matchup, and obviously they didn't take care of business when they needed to in front of a big crowd at McMahon Stadium. In the other semifinal out at the Gordie Howe Bowl in Saskatoon, the defending national champion Hilltops started slow and were only up 11-1 at the half, but 24 points in the third quarter blew out a tight game, and the running game of the Hilltops amassing 261 yards of rushing on the day and 424 total yards of offense, and not much Edmonton Wildcats could do on defense to stop the big rushing attack of Andre Lalonde. He finished 18 carries for 128 yards, but in a losing effort, Lavon Hawriliak from the Edmonton Wildcats, 25 carries for 232 yards on the day. So it wasn't the greatest performance for the Edmonton defense, but it was a pretty solid day for the running back. Taylor Yaramchuk, Edmonton Wildcats quarterback, struggled mightily on the day, going just 14 of 30 for 149 yards with a touchdown, but 6 big interceptions on the day, and really turned the field position. And Saskatoon's defense really flexed their muscles, showing the visiting Wildcats what defending national champs can do when it comes to playoff time.
You got to feel bad for the Wildcat defense. There were 11 turnovers. You mentioned the 6 interceptions, but 11 turnovers in that football game, backing the defense up. And you got a high-powered offense like the Hilltops. I mean, that's awfully tough to do on the road in the Gordie Howe Bowl, and not being able to really win the battle of field position and having the ball continue to be turned over. And, you know, the defense comes off the field. The ball gets put in the hands of the offense, and they turn over immediately. And the Wildcat defense has got to go right back out there and face a very good Hilltop offense. So I feel bad for the Wildcat defense. They really didn't get a chance to take a breather, take a rest, put their feet up on the bench just to get some oxygen into them, and then they're right back out on the field. So, I mean, kudos to the Hilltop offense for taking advantage and take what was given to them. And it's going to be a fun final. It's going to be a really fun final, the Gordie Howe Bowl next Sunday, when Regina visits Saskatoon in the old Saskatoon finals, or Saskatchewan finals, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I mean, what can you do? When you turn the ball over 11 times, you can't really expect to win a football game.
Speaking of looking ahead to next week, I'm going to turn our attention back to the BCFC, and the playoffs get started next week. And what can you lead us through those two playoff games out in the West?
The first one, Saturday in Nanaimo, Vancouver Island Raiders hosting the Okanagan Sun. This is the fourth time these two teams have met this season, as you mentioned, the unbalanced schedule previously. But that's the reason why the teams have now met each other 4 times. And the Vancouver Island Raiders have not lost a regular season games at home since 2005, and the Okanagan Sun went in there twice this year and missed last-second field goals, 4 victories. In Week 3, they missed a 10-yard field goal to win the game, missed that, and then in Week 8, they went into Nanaimo again, missed a 37-yard field goal to win the football game. So the Sun players, the coaching staff, they know that they can beat the Raiders, and I think the Raiders may know that the Sun can beat them at home. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Mind you, it's playoffs, and when you have veterans like Jordan Yance and Michael Shaper and Dustin Peterson, that offense and that offensive line is going to be very, very good, very tough at home with a big crowd at Caledonia Park. So it'll be interesting to watch. But the Sun, as I mentioned, confidence is such a big thing in junior football. And when you know you can beat a team, anything can happen. Look at Regina. They go into Calgary. They had a feeling they could beat the Colts, and they beat the 8-0 Calgary Colts. The Okanagan Sun looking to draw some of that coming into this week against Nanaimo and the Vancouver Island Raiders on Saturday at 1 o'clock. Now, the other game, Langley is hosting West Shore. The West Shore Rebels, they finished a very good 7-3, but because of the unbalanced schedule, they had 6 games the other direction. They faced Kamloops and Chilliwack 6 times over the course of the year, and between those two teams, there were only 3 victories the entire year. So West Shore really took advantage of that unbalanced schedule, and now they will have to go into Langley, a team that they just faced back in Week 8, and the Rams blew them out in West Shore. So now West Shore will get a chance to go into Langley to take on the Rams, and with the West Shore Rebels, formerly known, by the way, as the Victoria Rebels, but with the Rebels, it's their run game. And Greg Morris, I think the best back in the Canadian Junior Football League, and that's a lot to say when you have guys in London, guys in Saskatoon. But Greg has been just so good for the West Shore Rebels. If he will take that team as far as he can go. I mean, they will ride that horse. They will, as Coach Cartelacci has told me, they will dance with the lady that got them there, and they'll be dancing a lot with Greg Morris, and they will rely on him a lot going into Langley, 4 o'clock start on Saturday. And I mean, for the Rams, the 4 horsemen, if you will, on the offensive side, the quarterback, Greg Bocott, running back, Daniel Xavier, and then the 2 big receivers, Nick Downey, and also Malcolm Williams, who finished off the regular season with 41 catches to lead the conference. So it's going to be awfully tough for the Rebels, and they will have to really bring their A game to beat the Rams in that final.
And the final game this coming weekend in the CJFL takes place in Saskatoon between the Battle of Saskatchewan, Regina Thunder at the defending national champion Saskatoon Hilltops, and a tough place to play in Saskatoon at the Gordy Halbo. And the 2-time defending national champs are going to look to keep rolling and try to take care of their in-province rivals. Twice they met this year. The first one on September the 8th. It was in Saskatoon, and the Hilltops came out on top 24-9 and 493 yards of offense, pretty balanced, 245 and 262 through the air. And it was a tight game, 10-9 at half, and got blown out in the second half with 2 early touchdowns. So a 15-point victory there. But the return match 2 weeks later in Regina and Saskatoon put a good drubbing on them, 42-17 with 31-3 at the half. And again, 494 yards of offense. So they got the 2-headed monster with them, passing and rushing. And I don't see how Regina can stop another offensive monster like this 2 weeks in a row. What do you think, Rye?
It'll be awfully tough, but you just can't count it out. I mean, they went into Calgary, nobody gave them a chance, and they beat the Colts, by that score of 24-21. So you never know. It's going to be awfully tough. Absolutely, John. But you know, confidence is such a funny thing. Momentum's such a funny thing. Regina has that right now. And for Saskatoon, they're the 2-time defending champions. They want to make sure that they take care of business in their own place so they can host London in that Jostens Cup national semifinal game.
And that'll wrap up our week review on the CJFL report on RougeRadio.com. For Ryan Waters, I'm John DeNapoli, and we'll be back again next week with a review of the 2 BCFC semifinals, and we're going to crown the champion in the PFC final from Saskatoon.